So it's been about a week since I released my video on the Netflix documentary about Cleopatra, which is part of Jada Pinkett Smith's series on Netflix called African Queens. Uh, and quite a bit has happened since then with regards to this particular controversy. There's been quite a few response videos to the documentary released on YouTube as well, and these response videos also do a really good job of breaking down why the casting for Cleopatra is historically inaccurate. But also the director for this particular documentary about Cleopatra, Tina Garavi, released a response and wrote a response on Variety. And to be quite honest, I'm really not impressed. In fact, this her arguments are straight up shit. Um, she just makes a bunch of assertions without like backing up any of these arguments. And like if this was to be clear, like if this article was like uh submitted for like a final essay in like a ancient history or Greek history class, it would straight up get an F. 'Cause it's just that bad. So, um, it starts off uh, last summer. I was living in Venice Beach and had decided, due to a friend's persistence, to visit a fortune teller. Me, ever the skeptic, but game for a laugh, agreed to go along. What the fortune teller said made me roll my eyes. I'm not saying you are Cleopatra, but somehow you share her story and are connected. Again, she's trying to like position herself or portray herself as like a really creative writer and very talented writer using flashbacks to paint a picture is, not impressive. Um, Less than a month later, I got a call from a production company making Jada Pinkett Smith's African Queens and was subsequently hired to direct 4 episodes of a drama documentary on the life of the controversial leader. The joke was on me. And real quick, um, like I in the previous video that I uploaded last week, I explained why the cast, obviously the casting is like historically inaccurate, but also um why I mean I should like I should point out that like including Cleopatra in a series called African Queens is just hilarious because and it's just it shows like how historically illiterate and like anthropologically illiterate Jada Pinkett Smith and this director, uh, Tina Gavari, are because, including Cleopatra in a series on African queens would be like the equivalent of including J.R.R. Tolkien or Richard Dawkins in either a list or a documentary series on, I don't know, African intellectuals or African writers or something. Like, she was part of a foreign dynasty that conquered Egypt, and she was like about as Egyptian as Elizabeth Taylor was. Like, and the ironic thing is Elizabeth Taylor played Cleopatra, and that's you know, and she's like the more or was the more accurate casting. I remember as a kid seeing Elizabeth Taylor play Cleopatra. I was captivated, but even then, I felt the image was not right. Oh, yeah, you feel that it's not right. It's again, like like after reading this article, I got the feeling that this person was clearly influenced by like the woke left and like typical woke talking points and like probably reads like post-colonial literature and like CRT stuff. Um so and like it's apparent in this article. So like she feels that the image is not right. Okay, it's not about your feelings, it's about what the historical evidence says. Like what do the sources say or not say, as I point out in my previous video. What do like how is Cleopatra depicted in like busts and coins and frescoes from the Hellenistic and Roman era. Like, basically, what did the primary sources say? It's like the primary sources don't care about your feelings. It's about, and if you're gonna be someone either as a layman or a scholar who's like who wants to do accurate history and like, because history, like real quick, history is about figuring out what probably happened and like establishing like a timeline of events that probably happened and we can say with confidence occurred. But and we do that with a rigorous methodology, like the who, what, when, where, and why methodology, and like the multiple criterion of multiple attestation, putting sources in their historical context, things like that. It's not about feelings. Like you can't be a historian, like be ideologically motivated and like go into a historical investigation with like biases and like your presuppositions and your uh um like these and like these motivations. Like there's a term for that and it's confirmation bias. Like you can't do that. Was her skin, so it continues, was her skin really that white? Probably. um like I said, Elizabeth Taylor was technically the more accurate casting than like whoever this actress is that Jada Pinkett Smith has in her documentary. Because the thing that they have in common, even though Elizabeth Taylor was English and not uh, Greek like Cleopatra, both of them have the same amount of Egyptian ancestry, and that's 0%. So both, and I forget the name of the classicist, but might have been Dwayne Roller or Mike. I think is it Michael Grant. Um, both of whom who have written on the Hellenistic world and Ptolemaic Empire, specifically Cleopatra. Um, I think one of them said Cleopatra was about as Egyptian as a modern day Arizonan would. A modern day person living in Arizona is Apache, like 0%. But anyway, I mean, listen, Cleopatra traces her ancestry, most if not all of her ancestry, back to Macedonia. And because, as has been stated repeatedly, the founder of her dynasty was Ptolemy, who was a Macedonian general of Alexander the Great's. Alexander the Great conquers the Persian Empire, and Egypt was a part of the Persian Empire. And then once Alexander the Great dies, there was a schism or a conflict of sorts between his various generals, and Ptolemy ends up getting Egypt, although, well, he gets Egypt, but at times the Ptolemaic Empire does extend into like Syria or like Israel, Palestine, Syria area, but then there's like conflicts between the Seleucids and the Ptolemies over control of the Syria Levant area, but that's a whole nother discussion. But the point is, uh, Cleopatra, her skin was probably pretty fair, and there have been classicists who have pointed this out. Um, she would have had fair skin because Macedonia is in like northern Greece. And I mean, it's possible she could have had a light olive skin tone, but um, she's there are several frescoes from the Roman era, specifically from Pompeii, that depict her with fair skin, and one of them has her with red hair. So yeah, she was definitely pretty damn white. If we take those frescoes as solid evidence, and I think that those frescoes are pretty good evidence, or give us a pretty good idea. Along with like various coins that were minted, there's a lot of overlap with like the features they give Cleopatra and how she's depicted, because both the coins and these frescoes depict her as like a typical Hellenistic Greek woman. Yeah, based on that, probably had pretty fair skin. So, but again, this question she asks this director, was her skin really that white? It's a bunch of coke, and she's just like, it seems that she's, or she has always been um, pretty like disappointed, or like doesn't like the fact that Cleopatra was of mostly European descent. Um, with this new production, I could find the answers about Cleopatra's heritage and release her from the stranglehold that Hollywood had placed on her image. So you notice how with these like woke journalists and like these woke quote unquote creative writer or essayist types, they don't actually back up what they're saying. Like they just use a bunch of rhetoric and like uh, writing tropes and like narrative that like sort of is supposed to captivate you and like draw you in, rather than like back up what they're saying. Because like uh like this idea she has, the um like going into this production with these your preconceived notions and biases, like because she says with this new production I could find the answers about Cleopatra's heritage, like that gives off like vibes, or that gives off like uh these vibes, or like this sort of idea that she's going into this production to like with the goal of like making Cleopatra not only not white but probably black. Like she's going into this like thinking that Cleopatra's not white, and then she's gonna like look for look for anything that could support her position, or like anyone that will support her position. And um you know uh so like she, again, this is like confirmation bias. um and here's like the really the real crime. Born in Iran, I am Persian. So I mean that's just really bizarre, because as a Persian, like shouldn't you have sympathy for like both the native Egyptians and Greeks? Because you know Egyptians are subject to Afrocentrists and hoteps like constantly taking credit and attempting to rob them of their heritage. And by the way, it's not just Egyptians they do it with, but they do it with the Sumerians, they do it with the Akkadians, they do it with Socrates, they do it with the Moors, and yeah, they've done it with the Achaemenid or Persian Empire. So like, shouldn't she like, as someone who's, I'm assuming, proud to be Persian and like proud of your heritage, shouldn't you like have sympathy for other people that who have been victim of Afrocentrist like uh, culture vulture, like uh, taking credit for heritage, taking credit for like other groups' heritage, such as the Egyptians? Um, so born in Iran, I am Persian, and Cleopatra's heritage has been attributed at one time or another to the Greeks, the Macedonians, and the Persians. The known facts are that her Macedonian Greek family. Okay, so you just answered. Um, you just included like what the answer is to like what her heritage is. She was Macedonian Greek, but yeah, you gloss over it and like you just sort of hand wave and dismiss it. Um, and as for the uh, Cleopatra's heritage has been attributed at one time or another to the Greeks, the Macedonians, and the Persians. So that goes back to my point that she might have had a little bit of Persian, because the Ptolemies did intermarry with the Seleucids and were encouraged to intermarry with various Persian uh, mistresses and wives of the Seleucids. I think correct me if I'm wrong. I think Ptolemy Philadelphus, the second Ptolemy, he his wife was Persian, but I could be wrong. But the known facts are that her Macedonian Greek family, the Ptolemaic lineage, intermarried with West Asian Seleucid dynasty and had been in Egypt for 300 years. So, yeah, there was intermarriage between the Ptolemies and the Seleucids. Um, Cleopatra was 8 generations away from these Ptolemaic ancestors. Okay, so you're assuming that there's no incest going on, and that if because she was 8 generations in Egypt, that there must have been mixing going on with native Egyptians, just like all over the place. But again, this is your preconceived notion and like your presupposition, uh, and like the feeling you have, but you don't really have anything to back it up with. Just because Cleopatra was 8 generations in Egypt doesn't mean there was like a lot of mixing going on with native Egyptians. Like, I know there was like some speculation on who Cleopatra's mom was. It was probably Cleopatra V. Just look at any family tree of the Ptolemies, and most classicists agree that her mother was probably Cleopatra V. Because like I said in my previous video, if uh, Cleopatra was the illegitimate child of a Ptolemy, then the uh, Emperor Augustus's smear campaign against her would have like taken full advantage of that, and the Roman poets from the Augustan age would have you know harped on that constantly and like definitely mentioned that. But yeah, no, even if it wasn't Cleopatra V that her who was her Cleopatra VII's mom, it probably would have been another Alexandrian Greek or like a aristocratic Greek who was living in Alexandria, like a member of like a aristocratic Greek family in Alexandria who was like close with the Ptolemies. It was either like intermarriage within the Ptolemaic family or like a Greek family or another member of another Greek family that was close to the Ptolemies. Like it wasn't necessarily a native Egyptian. So she was 8 generations away, making the chance of her being white somewhat unlikely. Where's your evidence for that? Are you just assuming that? Because I just explained why that would not be the case. We have her family tree. We have depictions of Cleopatra from her time period. And there's no mention of like non-Greek family members in the Ptolemies. So like there's all this evidence that points to her probably being Macedonian Greek, which means she's of European descent, and that means she would probably be white. So the burden of proof is on you to explain why it would be unlikely that she would be white. So, but yeah, like this is what I was talking about with why the argumentation in this article is so bad, because her only justification for her being Cleopatra not being white is she was 8 generations away from the Ptolemaic ancestors. But again, we know we know who her mother probably was and who her maternal grandmother probably was, both Ptolemaic Greeks. And yeah, we know who her father was, and yeah, take a look at her family tree. Like and also the silence of the sources such as Plutarch and like the Roman poets from the Augustan age also point in the direction that there was no Egyptian family member or African family member. After 300 years, surely we can safely say Cleopatra was Egyptian. Again, that's quite a leap. So we went for her being white somewhat unlikely. Again, you got to justify that because there's quite a bit of evidence to the contrary in both art history evidence and a lack of mention of like non-white ancestors in the sources. And also coin evidence, like coins minted during her reign. Then you just jump after 300 years. Surely we can safely say Cleopatra was Egyptian. That's quite a leap. And it sounds like you're just parroting that crackpot Sally Ann Ashton, who is also a consultant on this documentary. So that, I mean, that's just another example of Jada Pinkett Smith and this director like looking for anyone to affirm their like these ideas or uh these ideas they have about Cleopatra that they already had, and they just went looking for people to like affirm it. Again, confirmation bias. Um, so, and for those who don't know, Sally Ann Ashton was a or is a Egyptologist who's not currently working at a university. I don't know what her job is now, but she runs a blog called Kemet Expert, which again makes really shitty arguments for why ancient Egypt needs to be put in an Afrikaan context, Afrikaan with a K. Um, and she's like, she's basically like an Afrocentrist apologist, and like honestly, I think she's a grifter. Like I don't think she actually believes what she says. I think she just wants attention and clout, and she wants to go against the status quo to get notoriety. Um, but anyways, um, so she's yeah, this person, this director, she's parroting her points. Oh, and by the way, one of the really shitty arguments that Sally Ann Ashton uses is she she says that there were Afro combs found in pre-dynastic Egypt, but there's actually a really good video by Egyptologist 7 who like basically destroys that argument and shows that these quote unquote Afro combs were also found in medieval Scandinavia, like during the era of the Vikings. These like quote unquote Afro combs are probably just like hairpins that look exactly like the artifacts Sally Ann Ashton is talking about. Have yeah, they were found in like Viking era archaeological sites. So clearly these weren't used for like kinky hair. They were just probably hairpins. But again, Sally Ann Ashton, like Jada Pinkett Smith and this person, I'm forgetting her name, uh, Tina Gabari, they project their biases onto the ancient world, and they uh, um, they don't actually like back up their arguments with like rigorous evidence. They project their biases onto evidence and then like frame it and like try to make it fit their uh, narrative that they're pushing. Uh, she was no more Greek or Macedonian than Rita Wilson or Jennifer Aniston. I'm pretty sure Jennifer Aniston, she's like either half Greek or she half Greek, I forget, but still she's genetically Greek, so she and Jennifer Aniston obviously looks white. Um, and she so like and half of her genes at least go back to mainland Greece. So she has like at least 50% genetic overlap with Greeks. So what's your point there? Um, just because you're not born in Greece doesn't mean you're not genetically or ancestrally Greek. And also, as classicists have pointed out, Cleopatra would have considered herself a Greek woman. She had herself depicted as a Greek. Her coinage shows her as a Greek woman. Um, and even though she participated in the cult of Isis and like sort of positioned herself as like the incarnation of Isis, it was a very Hellenized version of ISIS. So like for pretty much she considers herself a Hellenistic Greek woman. Doing the research, I realized what a political act it would be to see Cleopatra portrayed by a black actress. Oh, really? I mean, yeah, that's pretty obvious. It's not just a political act, it's a ideologically motivated act. And you're not doing it to be historically accurate. You're doing it because, you're an apologist for Afrocentrists. So you're doing it because you think it's woke AF. For me, the idea that people had gotten so incredibly wrong before, historically from Theda Bara to Monica Bellucci. I think Theda Bara is like half Jewish, so that's more accurate than like your casting choice, because Jews trace their ancestry to Israel, and that's in the Mediterranean. So uh, Jews have more in common genetically with Cleopatra and the Macedonians than the actress you picked anyway. So, um, and Monica Bellucci, that sounds like, I mean, I don't know where in Italy her ancestors are from, but, or I don't know, it looks like an Italian name, but like if, and the thing is, if Monica Bellucci traces her ancestry back to like Sicily, that'd be way more accurate. That's like 100%, like pretty much very accurate casting, because um a lot of Sicilians, uh like if you do like DNA tests of Sicilians show they have a substantial amount of Greek ancestry, and that's because of Magna Graeca. There were a lot of uh Greek colonies in Sicily starting in the Archaic period. But yeah, that's way more accurate, and it's actually very accurate casting if you have Monica Bellucci play Cleopatra. And recently with Angelina Jolie and Gal Gadot. Again, Gal Gadot's Israeli, so that's more accurate than your casting because she's Mediterranean, and Cleopatra was a Mediterranean, of Mediterranean ancestry, and also uh, native Egyptians are Mediterranean in ancestry. Um, in the running, so Angelina Jolie and Gal Gadot in the running to play her meant that we had to get it even more right. Even more right. So you're just assuming that you're even because you cast someone who's not white, you're even more right. Like, oh my God. Like why are you assuming that it's that's such a weird statement. Like she like like first off, there's like a bit of like over dramatization or bit of hyperbole going on here because uh you have to get it even more right. Well, how do you know it's even more right? Are you just assuming that? Again, with your confirmation bias. Because casting Monica Bellucci or Gal Gadot is as Cleopatra is more accurate than your casting. The hunt was on to find the right performer to bring Cleopatra into the 21st century. Clearly, you failed at that because uh, your casting your casting choice for Cleopatra was inaccurate as fuck. Okay. Um, why shouldn't Cleopatra be a melanated sister? Um, how about because that's historically inaccurate? Because all the visual evidence shows that she was a Hellenistic Greek ruler of who was a foreign ruler of Egypt, and none of the primary sources say anything about her being melanated or having non-white ancestry. And why do some people need Cleopatra to be white? Okay. um, so this again, you can tell that she's like extremely influenced by critical theory, postmodern or like post-colonial ways of thinking, like this activist way of thinking, because it's not about Cleopatra needing people needing to be white. Again, she's assuming that. She's like assuming intentions of like the people and the historians who are criticizing this casting choice of hers. It's not about needing Cleopatra to be white. It's about being historically accurate. Cast someone who's either Greek or, if you want to, like half Greek, half uh, Egyptian, and that wouldn't be inaccurate because there's a lot of light-skinned Egyptians, so half Egyptian, half Greek. They probably look Mediterranean anyways. But no, if you want to be accurate, get a Macedonian or a Greek actress. Um, it's not about needing. No one needs her to be white. Most people that have criticized this casting choice, they're doing so because they're more interested in like documentaries being accurate. Like like for me, for example, like I'm not motivated by anything, or I'm not motivated by like racial politics, or um, I'm not motivated by like a political agenda. The reason why I criticize this casting choice, or I want uh, documentaries to like you know be accurate, is because I'm very interested in the ancient world, and I want to like find out as much as I can about the ancient world, and like with history and archaeology, I want to find out as much as we can about like what probably happened, and what the lives were like, and what these people were like in the ancient Mediterranean, the Hellenistic world and Roman world. Um, so I'm motivated by interest in these topics. It seems that you're just projecting your feelings onto people that are like criticizing your casting choice. Again, the iron law of woke projection never misses, uh, and that it's apparent right here. So, um, her proximity to whiteness, again, this is like CRT language, seems to give her value. No, it doesn't, because race is a modern terms, and we shouldn't project it onto the ancient world. And it's not about giving her value due to her being white. It's about, again, being accurate. Um, like, and for some Egyptians, it seems to really matter. Okay, so several things with this sentence. Uh, Again, she doesn't really back up her statement about her proximity to whiteness. It's again, that's just like rhetoric and an assertion. What do you mean her proximity to whiteness? Like if the primary sources such as the frescoes from Pompeii depict her as fair skinned, then that's what she looked like, most likely. And if it is the case that she was fair skinned, like the historical Cleopatra was fair skinned, then that that that's just a fact. Then it's not about her being proximate to whiteness, and it doesn't give her value. Like no one really cares what her skin color is. They care about like they want to like for me, for example, I want to find out as much as I can about Cleopatra's life and her interaction with the uh, Roman Republic and early Roman Empire, um, and like how she ruled as like I want to find out as much as I can about who she was as a ruler. Like it's not about giving her value due to her skin color. Again, you're just projecting your own ideas and feelings onto like people who disagree with you. Um, and as for the second part, um, as for some Egyptians, it seems to really matter. No, Egyptians admit that Cleopatra was not a native Egyptian. She was Greek, so they don't really care. Like they want to be as honest about the history as like anyone else. Um, so and like they don't feel like as much of a connection to her because again, she was a foreign ruler over Egypt. Um, and again, why do you assume that it seems to really matter? Did you have like arguments with some Egyptians on like social media, and like they and like instead of like actually addressing their arguments and like uh steel manning and like seeing what they actually have to say, you just assume that it seems to really matter that that it matters to the Egyptians how proximate to whiteness she is. Again, iron law of woke projection. Um, After much hang wrangling or hang ringing and countless auditions, we found in Adele James an actor who could convey not only Cleopatra's beauty but also her strength. Um, for thing about Cleopatra's beauty is that the primary sources seem to indicate that she wasn't really like physically beautiful. Uh, she was just like again really seductive, but there's issues with like how Plutarch and other primary sources portray her because she wasn't like seducing like Julius Caesar and Mark Antony just to seduce them. Like there was like political motivations to like cozy up to the Roman Empire. Um, but regardless, they based on the coinage and the even like one of the frescoes in Pompeii, and also how Plutarch, you know, portrays her or describes her. She doesn't sound like particularly beautiful as we would think of it, or you know, she I think like Plutarch emphasized like her uh sort of her seductiveness and like how she could seduce, you know. But again, this is another inaccurate part of this documentary. Cleopatra was not this drop dead gorgeous beauty. Um, what the historians can confirm is that it is more likely that Cleopatra looked like Adele than Elizabeth Taylor ever did. Not true. Um, Again, another assertion of yours and one that you don't back up. So, like if I was a professor of ancient history and I was reading this, then this like article was passed to me as a final essay. This would be a big red mark, and one of the reasons why this is like this would get an F because you don't back up or cite any historians who say that. Um, I mean, I don't know. You don't even cite that crackpot Sally Ann Ashton. You just assert this, and even she, Sally Ann Ashton, as I mentioned, is ideologically motivated. So, um, yeah, which historians? Like if you're gonna like write on historical topics and make arguments, you gotta cite historians and primary sources. You can't just assert things like, "Oh, historians confirm this." No, they don't. Um, in fact, uh, should I? Maybe I can pull it up. Um, there was actually a classicist who, as I mentioned before, who said that uh, one thing that Elizabeth Taylor and Cleopatra have in common is like that they're 0% Egyptian. Let me see if I can pull it up on Wikipedia. Here we go. Let's see here. Um, oh, here it is. Although she's okay, she's Stacy Schiff is not a classicist, my mistake, but she is a journalist, and I've read her book, and she does cite classicists and historians who are experts in the Greco-Roman world um, in her book. So again, she backs up her arguments or like her portrayal of Cleopatra in her book with actual historians, but she concurs Cleopatra was not dark skinned. Um, that the Ptolemies were in fact Macedonian, which makes Cleopatra approximately as Egyptian as Elizabeth Taylor. So, I mean, hey, look, at least I back up my statement about Cleopatra and Elizabeth Taylor being uh, about as Egyptian as each other, or both of them being 0% Egyptian, which is something they have in common. With the actual like source, and Stacy Schiff does cite historians in her book about Cleopatra. I think her book came out in 2011. Oh, and also here's Mary Lefkowitz, who's a classicist. pointing out that had Cleopatra's grandmother or mother been Egyptian, it would have been pointed out in the sources, which I mentioned in my previous video, and I think I mentioned in this video too. But anyways, again, which historians? You gotta the historians that, or the people that are well read in uh, the Hellenistic world and ancient Greece, Greek and Roman history that I've seen seems to not only say that Cleopatra was Macedonian Greek, but she had as much Egyptian ancestry as Elizabeth Taylor did, which is none. So Cleopatra would have looked more like Elizabeth Taylor than Adele, right? Which is, I forget her Adele's last name, but the actress who's playing Cleopatra in this new documentary. As production got nearer, I realized the magnitude and political nature of this job. It was important to get things right. Clearly, you don't care about getting things right because of your casting and your assumptions about the Ptolemaic Empire and your lack of like understanding of the ancient world and like how to properly cite sources and back up your arguments. So you clearly don't care about being rigorous or getting things right. All right, so it was important to get things right, but also to find a way of telling the story with humanism and nuance. That's something that this documentary seems to lack, nuance. The last thing we needed was another Cleopatra divorced from her womanhood and power only to be sexualized. The HBO series Rome portrayed one of the most intelligent, sophisticated, and powerful woman in the world as a sleazy, dissipated drug addict, yet Egypt didn't seem to mind. Well, how do you know that? Are you just assuming that? Again, you're just asserting things. Like, I'm sure you could find Egyptologists or Egyptian classicists or, a classical scholar from Egypt who would rightly criticize that portrayal in Rome on HBO. And she goes on, where was the outrage then? Again, that's a whataboutism. You're just trying to deflect from the criticism of your documentary, of your casting choice, and how it's, again, politically motivated. But again, you could probably find many classical scholars who are very critical of her portrayal in Rome. And, even if we were to take your statement at face value, most people, because Rome on HBO was a like historical drama, so it's like, not a documentary. It's or it was basically like, same thing as like Downton Abbey. It's like it takes place in Republican Rome, I think. And it's, you follow it like a drama series. Like, you're not supposed to take it super seriously. So I think most people recognize like not to take that series seriously. Like, it's even the portrayal of Cleopatra in that series, they probably, people probably figured that, hey, this is just a drama series on HBO. Don't take it seriously. So where was the outrage then? So again, you're deflecting, and that's what's called a whataboutism. Oh, what about HBO series Rome? We're not talking about that. We're talking about your documentary and how all the evidence like contradicts and like debunks your casting of Cleopatra. But portraying her as black, well, yeah, because in even depicting Cleopatra as sleazy in HBO series Rome, the creators of that could have like justified it by saying, "Oh, we were reading Cassius Dio, or we used Cassius Dio and Plutarch as our sources for that." But all you have for your casting choice is like Afrocentrist propaganda. perhaps it's not just that I've directed a series that portrays Cleopatra as black, but that I have asked Egyptians to see themselves as Africans. Again, that's uh, again, Africa is a meaningless category. It's a continent, not a race. Uh, Asking Egyptians to see themselves as Africans is just as silly to ask uh, like a Syrian or a Lebanese person to see themselves as the same race as like someone from China or Japan. Asia, like Africa, is a huge continent with a diverse um, group of peoples, and you know, sort of like treating them as a monolith is pretty stupid. So Africa, yeah, Africa is just a massive continent with many different shades, races, ethnicities, and cultures in it. So there's no one look in Africa. Um, and once you get past that, like, why would you want to have like an African quote unquote consciousness? Again, I think she's like partially influenced by like the CRT racial consciousness to like awaken to a racial consciousness and have deep connections with like other people within like a broad meaningless group. Because like yeah, what connections do Egyptians have with other Africans? And they are furious at me for that. No, they're furious at you and Jadapinkettsmith because you're blackwashing their heritage and you're blackwashing ancient Egypt when that's inaccurate. Uh, that's completely inaccurate because the genetic evidence, the archaeology, and the primary sources and the artwork from Egypt show that they were more Middle Eastern. And I'm okay with this. Yeah, we don't care. You're clearly brainwashed and ideologically motivated. Um, while shooting, I became the target of a huge online hate campaign. No, they're just rightfully calling you out for your BS and your ahistorical pseudo history approach to this documentary. Like most Egyptians that I see debate with Afrocentrists online actually back their arguments up with the DNA evidence and the archaeological art history evidence. So it's not a hate campaign. They're calling you out for like partaking in something in that like erases the their heritage. Like, modern Egyptians are descended from ancient Egyptians, whether you like it or not. And the DNA evidence and the physical anthropology proves this. Um, so it's not again not a hate campaign. And this is how like the woke sort of like position themselves. They like any criticism of their arguments or stuff that they say is seen as like even the slightest criticism is hate campaign. Um, Egyptians accuse me of blackwashing and stealing their history. Well, that's what you're doing. Um, because again, the genetic evidence and the physical anthropology, there have been numerous studies within physical anthropology which look at the craniofacial features of ancient Roman era and modern Egyptians that show that, there's little to no genetic change within Egypt from the time of the pharaohs to present day. So, um, I mean, yeah, uh, your overly simplistic view of Egypt being in Africa and like blackwashing their heritage, yeah, that's gonna piss them off because that is their heritage and they have a right to be proud of it. Speaking of modern Egyptians, um, some threatened to ruin my career. I mean, you're not really gonna have a career because before this, I didn't know who the fuck you were, and no one knows who the fuck you are. And after this documentary is released and it's rightfully shit on, and hopefully it like fades into obscurity, no one's gonna ever hear of you again. So you won't have a career. So uh, yeah, you don't really have much of a career to ruin. Which I wanted to tell them was laughable. That's ironic. Your career is laughable. Um, I I was ruining it very well for myself. Thank you very much. Um, oh, so you're positioning yourself as a victim and as like a quote unquote martyr because you're being attacked for your very woke documentary. No, uh you just use like shit justification to like release it to like cast Cleopatra as a black woman. Um and like yeah, no, you're not a victim. You just don't know shit about ancient history and people were making fun of you for it. Um no amount of reasoning or reminders that Arab invaders oh, see this part really pissed me off and it's going to piss off modern Egyptians rightfully so. Um No amount of reasoning or reminders that Arab invaders had not yet happened in Cleopatra's age seemed to stem the tide of ridiculous comments. Again, so she's parroting another stupid, like overly simplistic argument from Sally Ann Ashton, who justifies the Africanity of Egypt by saying modern Egyptians are disconnected from ancient Egypt because of the Arab invasions. Again, there's anyone who knows, excuse me, um, anyone who knows anything about the history of Egypt or ancient medieval history or genetics or anthropology, physical anthropology, or really anything about how the anything about like the medieval Arab world. Uh, so basically, broadly, anyone who knows anything about physical anthropology or history knows that the Arab invasions didn't result in a genocide, and the um, they didn't displace or mix with the native Egyptians so much that the Egyptians became lighter skinned. No, so first off, once the uh, okay, so like in the 7th century, obviously the Arabs swept through the Middle East and North Africa, and that's how Islam was spread. So, but they didn't replace the Egyptians. I believe there was like in Egypt total, there was like about uh 5 million people living in there, but there was only like 10, 12,000 people living in the Arabian Peninsula. So again, the math doesn't really work out. They never would have replaced, uh, they didn't have the numbers to replace all the native Egyptians. The native Egyptians just converted to Islam. And even then, there were still Christian Egyptians in the medieval Islamic Egypt. They're called, and they're still around today, they're called Coptic Christians. And the Coptic Christians have 0% Arab DNA, 0% Greek DNA. They are absolutely the Coptic Christians are absolutely the descendants of the ancient Egyptians, along with the obviously the Muslim Egyptians, but I'm emphasizing the Coptic Christian connection because they their language is actually descended from the ancient Egyptian language. Um, uh, So yeah, the Arabs never replaced the native Egyptians. And there's even like medieval Arab sources that talk about the Coptic Christians or the Copts living in medieval Egypt. And I mean, this isn't like a verbatim quotation. It's sort of a paraphrase, but there's like one Arab writer who says like he asked his traveling companion, "Who are these Coptic? Who are the Copts?" And then his friend says like the Copts have been in place in Egypt since the time of the pharaohs. So even medieval Arabs knew that the Copts were descended from the ancient Egyptians. Um, but also, yeah, the physical anthropology. There's been numerous physical anthropology studies that show that there's been little to no, uh, genetic uh, or little to no demographic change within Egypt since the time of the Neolithic and the Pleistocene or the Paleolithic era. And yeah, the modern Egyptians have been in place since the Paleolithic. There's been any physical anthropology study you look at that compares modern Egyptian samples to the ancient Egyptians show like the like the amount of similarities or like most like the similarities are like very much point in the direction of like no displacement or little to no genetic shift or demographic shift. So also if you look any like DNA study you look at, whether it be the 2017 ancient Egyptian DNA study or like various other studies of the ancient and modern Middle Eastern peoples, shows that modern Egyptian samples cluster very close to ancient Egyptian samples on like a principal component analysis. So that indicates there's a lot of genetic overlap between modern and ancient Egyptians. Again, you can see this in the 2017 study and various other studies done on North African and Middle Eastern peoples. But yeah, almost lost my train of thought there. But yeah, anyways, and yeah, and just look at the artwork from like the Old Kingdom, like various statues and both wooden and like granite statues and wall reliefs show that the ancient Egyptians looked more like Eastern Mediterranean or Middle Eastern peoples. So they like the reason why they looked like that is because during the Neolithic era there was a back migration that occurred from the Middle East. These were the first farmers of the Middle East that migrated into Egypt, and that's how farming first spread into Egypt and North Africa. And also that's how like crops such as wheat, barley, and like various domestic animals such as like sheep and goats spread into Egypt. So yeah, look at, again, more broadly speaking, look at artwork from ancient Egypt and compare it to like modern Egyptians, and they look identical. So broadly speaking, modern Egyptians are descended from ancient Egyptians. And so like this statement right here, no amount of reasoning or reminders that Arab invasions had not yet happened, like, again, that shows that how inept this director is at ancient and medieval history. Excuse me. And yeah, I mean, that's like one of the more egregious things about this essay, and that's gonna rightfully anger modern Egyptians for all the reasons I stated. Because modern Egyptians are very aware of what the scientific and archaeological evidence says. No reasoning or reminders that the Arab invasions had not yet happened in Cleopatra's age, but yet, as I mentioned, the Ptolemies. This is also the other reason why this statement's like stupid as hell. The Ptolemies were, and also Alexander the Great's army, who was Macedonian, invaded the Persian Empire and then conquered the Persian Empire, which resulted in Egypt being under the domain or under the control of the Macedonian Greeks. So, and then obviously the Ptolemies got control. So instead of an Arab invasion, it was actually a Macedonian Greek conquest. So, and yeah, so it seemed to stem the tide of the ridiculous comments. No, these comments are actually on point, and they Uh, I would imagine that any native Egyptian or anyone who's like actually competent with history who debated you actually like wiped the floor with you and like just destroyed your arguments. So the only ridiculous comments I see are the ones made in this article. Um, Amir and okay, so again, this next sentence right here seems like another literary device that she's using to make this seem like such a very captivating story or article. Um, Amir in his bedroom in Cairo wrote to me earnestly. Wait, Amir in his bedroom in Cairo wrote to me to earnestly appeal that Cleopatra was Greek. Oh Lord, why would that be a good thing to you, Amir? You're Egyptian. Or I don't know, maybe that actually did happen to maybe someone named Amir actually commented on one of her posts, but um I mean, yeah, he's not wrong. Cleopatra was Greek. I mean, it's in the name, Cleopatra, and I've stated this in my previous video. Cleopatra is a Greek name. Uh, it's attested in first earlier in the Ptolemaic dynasty. Also, Alexander the Great has a sister or had a sister named Cleopatra, and I believe there was also a Cleopatra, someone with the name Cleopatra in the Iliad. Um, but anyways, uh, again, she misses the point. Amir doesn't care that whether Cleopatra has a connection with him. He wants to be accurate about the history of his his nation and his people. And it also like he wants to be accurate about the history of the ancient history of the Eastern Mediterranean. But you seem to project your feelings onto him by uh, thinking that he cares that or that he shouldn't care about her being Greek because he's Egyptian. Uh, you're projecting your feelings that you should only care or position yourself within an argument based on your background. But no, it sounds like Amir cares about being accurate with history. Okay, we're almost done. Um, so was Cleopatra black? Oh my God. Uh, so was Cleopatra black? We don't know for sure, but we can be certain she wasn't white like Elizabeth Taylor. Um, no. Uh, for your first question, so was Cleopatra black? Absolutely not. We can be very sure about that. But again, history is about establishing what probably happened. So we can say that Cleopatra was probably not black. Um, but if we go off the archaeological evidence, such as the artistic depictions, then the evidence is even stronger. And such as, and I'm going to keep bringing up the coins minted during her reign. Um, yeah, she was not black, and we can be very confident in that. Uh, it's not that we don't know for sure. No, we're very damn sure that she was not black. So, uh, yeah. So your statement here is, I love how uh, you just like hand wave all the evidence that contradicts your position and the way you frame it. Uh, we don't know for sure whether or not she was black, but we can be certain she wasn't white. Well, no, we can actually be pretty sure about that. If she was 100% Macedonian, as the her family tree suggests, and as the artistic evidence suggests, um, yeah, we can be pretty sure that she was European and looked white. Um, and that's how artistic depiction, the artistic depictions from her time period show her. Um, we need to have a conversation with with ourselves about colorism and the internalized white supremacy that Hollywood has indoctrinated us with. Um, yeah, there's so much wrong with this sentence. So yeah, I love how the woke, like they always state, oh, it's all about having conversation. We need to have conversations, but see, within conversations, there's disagreement. Yet the woke can't handle someone disagreeing with their worldview or how they think the world works with regards to race and like different cultures interacting. Um, Yet, so they say they're open to conversation, but as soon as there's like slight pushback of their, let's say racial scapegoating of whites or, you know, uh, how they view the history of the U.S. or how they view how race works, they accuse the other side of racism and they want to shut down the other side and not listen. Um, and again, colorism, this doesn't have to do with colorism, it's about being historically accurate. Um, and the internalized white supremacy. So, yeah, again, this is just rhetoric. She's just asserting that there is internalized white supremacy in Hollywood and uh, the wider U.S. society. Like she's just asserting that and using strong language, so she doesn't have to like back it up or justify her position. Um, yeah, again, how do you know there's internalized white supremacy? Is it that anyone that disagrees with you has internalized white supremacy? Um, or anyone that's like concerned with uh, historical accuracy with regards to documentaries about the Greco-Roman world has internalized white supremacy. Um, because, you know, uh, that's obviously a really moronic statement. Um, and I mean, let's see here. Um, yeah, again, uh, just a bunch of rhetoric. Um, and I think the other thing about this statement is, um, so she positions like anytime someone wants to cast a Greek or a European or even someone with light skin as Cleopatra as internalized white supremacy. Uh, her solution is to like sort of you can sort of see the influence of CRT in this. Her solution and Jada Pinkett Smith's solution is to do the radical opposite. So to basically radically overturn uh, things like historical accuracy and like depicting Cleopatra the way she would have looked based on the historical and art history evidence. So she positions that as internalized white supremacy, and then her solution is probably going to be to cast this woman as Cleopatra and do the radical opposite basically. Um, Again, she has no evidence that we all have internalized white supremacy or that it's indoctrinated. We're indoctrinated with it. Um, Especially since most of us, most people who are rational thinkers and know anything about ancient history know that um, race as we know it did not exist in the ancient world, and the ancient Egyptians uh, would have been more Middle Eastern in appearance, so it's not really white. Um, so, um, yeah, white supremacy is quite honestly irrelevant. We're more concerned with, again, being as accurate and, uh, having documentaries that really capture what the ancient world looked like and learning as much as we can. Um, Most of all, we need to realize that Cleopatra's story is less about her than it is about who we are. Again, that's just rhetoric. Uh, um, it's almost as if we don't recognize that our misogynar, I think that's just another made-up term for that the woke came up with, still has an effect on us today. We need to liberate our imaginations and boldly create a world in which we can explore our historical figures without fearing the complexity that comes with their depiction. Again, that's her basically being wishy-washy and saying, "Oh, I'm just reimagining what she could have looked like and who she could have been." Um, but again, her casting choice is deliberately provocative and it's pseudo historical. So it's not about imagine, uh, and no one fears the complexity that comes with like certain historical figures. Uh, again, uh, it's about being accurate. Uh, and like how, and I don't get how being pseudo historical and pure casting of Cleopatra like explores her complexity. Because her skin color had nothing to do with how she knew several languages or her how like her the previous Ptolemaic women such as Bernike, she probably led armies into war and knew how to ride horses and you know um and like was very politically savvy. um so yeah, like your casting doesn't really like amplify that. It's just uh your casting choice, it's just pseudo historical. um I'm proud to stand with Queen Cleopatra, or reimagined Cleopatra, and with the team that made this. Yeah, we don't care. Again, this is a once this documentary comes out, we're gonna debunk it and make fun of it, and as we rightly should. Um, we reimagined a world over 2,000 years ago, once where once there was an exceptional woman who ruled. I would like to draw a direct line from her to the woman in Egypt who rose up in the Arab uprisings. Okay, so now you're extending or attempting to like extend an olive branch to modern Egyptians, but at the same time you say they're the products of Arab invasions when obviously that's gonna piss them off. Uh, so again, uh, I would like to draw a direct line from her to the women in Egypt who rose up in the Arab uprisings, and to my Persian sisters who are today rebelling against the brutal regime. Never before has it been more important to have women leaders, white or black. Okay, so you end with the let's all come together in such an important time such as this. Um, but again, your overall this essay was just absolute garbage, and the arguments were extremely weak. She doesn't back up anything she says. It's just narrative, as you guys can all see. Um, and this person, Tina Gabari and uh, jadapinkettsmith, they're not to be taken seriously as uh, as like people who know anything about the ancient world, because clearly they don't. So I don't take them seriously. Neither should anyone else. Um, and this article shows that this Tina Garab oh my god, Tina Garabi, uh, she does not know what the fuck she's talking about, and her justification for the casting is just nonsensical. So again, all right, so we got through this article without bursting a blood vessel or getting too pissed off. But yeah, this honestly, if I was a professor of ancient history, I would give this like a probably like a 0%, to be quite honest. Definitely an F, because my God, the arguments are just so bad and my God. But yeah, that's all for now.